people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
De la noche, Stephanie Piñeiro.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. It would seem that unified featherweight champion Amanda Serrano's ring return has been pushed from the end of this year to the beginning of the next one, January 3rd at El Coliseo Roberto Clemente in San Juan, Puerto Rico.
Wepa.
Sporting a professional record of 47 wins with 4 losses and 1 draw, 31 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 52 professional bouts, and still in possession of 2 of the 4 major titles in the featherweight division. It's unclear how long Amanda Serrano means to keep boxing, keep fighting, because she really doesn't have to. For all we know, this could be her swan song, her send-off to a different aspect of the sport, a more promotional aspect, a managerial aspect. It's my understanding that Amanda Serrano will be overseeing the women's division of boxing at MVP. Coming off of those 2 consecutive losses to Katie Taylor, one controversial, at least in my opinion. The second fight, I felt that Amanda Serrano did enough to win that fight, and I don't know why they didn't give it to her. I don't know why she didn't. The third fight, Katie won that emphatically. Katie did win that clear. By my reckoning, they should at least be 2-1 with each other.
They should be.
But they're not. And so Amanda is now returning to the featherweight division where there are 2 other champions there, Nina Menka, who's still recovering from spinal surgery, and Tiaria Brown, who successfully defended her newly obtained WBC title not that long ago against France's own Emma Gongara. I heard a rumor that Amanda may be fighting Erica Cruz again in a second installment of their initial meeting. That was a crowd pleaser. It was an action-packed fight from start to finish, which would explain why Amanda might fight her again. That age-old Puerto Rico versus Mexico rivalry that has given us some barn burners, some fan favorites, that might explain why Amanda would give her a second crack at the apple. But it's just a rumor, and it should be treated as such. We don't know yet who she's going to be fighting. I initially thought she'd be back by December. It being that she's not the only Puerto Rican fighter planning a big fight in Puerto Rico for the beginning of the coming year. Her buddy, Xander Zayas, is also planning on fighting in Puerto Rico in his first defense of his newly obtained WBO title. Is it possible that 2 major fights land on the island of Puerto Rico in the same month next year, or will they combine them?
Is that possible?
We've known for a while now that Top Rank means to give their boy Xander Zayas a homecoming fight in his next fight. We've known that for months, but we've also known that Amanda plans on doing a homecoming fight too. Ideally, you would combine them. Amanda Serrano is an established name, one of the greatest fighters, male or female, that the island has produced, and Xander represents the future. The next generation of great Puerto Rican fighters, next generation of Puerto Rican champions. I would think that ideally, if they're both going to do a fight in Puerto Rico in January, beginning of next year, just combine them. And with Top Rank still being between broadcasters right now, you may as well outsource Xander to MVP if they're willing to have him. And they might be. It's not like MVP doesn't use fighters from other promotions on their shows. They've used Golden Boys fighters in Floyd Schofield and Zerto Ramirez. For the Jake Paul versus Gervonta Davis fight, they've got Gary Antoine Russell on the undercard. They've used Golden Boy Promotions fighters. They've used PBC fighters. So I don't think they'd have a problem using a Top Rank fighter. The question is, would Top Rank have a problem with that? This is just me bouncing ideas around. That if Amanda and Xander are planning on doing homecoming fights early in the year, early next year, why not just combine them? We'll see what happens. We'll see what they do. But the official rumor is that Amanda Serrano's ring return has been pushed back from the end of this year to the beginning of the next one against an opponent that has yet to be announced. In men's light heavyweight news, if David Benavidez beats Anthony Yarde, he will face Artur Beterbiev next, and the winner will face Dimitri Bivol. Via the newly updated WBC rankings, Beterbiev is set to face the winner of Benavidez versus Yarde to regain his WBC title lost in his undisputed fight against Dimitri. Currently, Artur is ranked at number 1. We know that Artur is set to return to action on the undercard of Benavidez versus Yarde. We also know that the Saudis are planning a quick turnaround for David Benavidez, that if he does the business and beats Anthony, he will return to action shortly after that in the coming year in another Saudi show, presumably against Artur, given where Artur is ranked. And because the only other champion at the weight, Dimitri Bivol, is still out recovering from surgery, the only sensible fight and sensical fight to make is the Beterbiev fight. This is more or less how I wanted it to happen.
I think this is how a lot of people wanted it to happen. They didn't necessarily want an immediate rematch between Dimitri and Artur. They wanted to see David interject himself into that situation, have one of them fight him.
And it's looking like it's going to be Artur. If Artur can take care of America's own, Dion Nicholson, and if David can take care of Anthony Yarde, barring illness or injury or unforeseen circumstances, they should be able to meet up with each other in the coming year. I don't think Samson Lukowicz is all that crazy.
I don't think he's too keen on David fighting Artur, but he doesn't have much of a choice. You come back to America and fight who to sell what?
People are not buying pay-per-views in this country anywhere near as much as they used to. The model has been used and abused over the years to the point where the market is oversaturated, and now nobody's in a hurry to buy nothing. So you don't come back to America and hide out here and make a bunch of money. The best money in boxing right now is international money, and the light heavyweight division is primarily an international division. Most of the money involves international fighters, and worse.
Coming back to America doesn't absolve you of fighting Artur. He's ranked at number 1 now, coming off a loss. If he beats Dion Nicholson, he's your problem. In Saudi or America, you have to deal with him.
The only way out of it, if David were looking for a way out of it, would be an injury. He stubs his toe, gets a hangnail,
Steps on a Lego.
but even with that, he would only be delaying the inevitable. Now, he himself says that he's not running from these fights. He wants them.
We'll see how much he wants them when the time comes.
Because Turkey is willing to pay him handsomely. He's willing to pay to play. All you have to do is oblige him. How does a fight between Artur Beterbiev and David Benavidez go? Obviously, that's contingent upon what happens with David and Anthony and what happens with Artur and Dion. Artur Beterbiev is at that age where no matter what kind of fighter he has been, that could dramatically change on the night. He's pushing 40. An extended amateur career, a decorated professional career, it has a way of catching up to you unexpectedly.
So there's extra emphasis on how he looks with Dion Nicholson, provided that he stays in character, and if history is any indicator of things to come.
I mean, that's important. He has to be able to stay in character, and we'll see if he does on that undercard. But if he does, yeah, I would give him the edge over David Benavidez, even though David is a little taller and a little longer.
Certainly younger.
David Benavidez and Artur Beterbiev are both pressure fighters, but what separates them are the little things. That David Benavidez's punches are often wider than Artur Beterbiev's and that he telegraphs them.
But you can see them coming.
That makes those punches less defensible and leaves David Benavidez open to be countered.
Where Artur Beterbiev's punches are noticeably shorter, he shoots from the hip, the punch doesn't have to travel as far, and he's not wasting a half a second loading up the shot to put power on it. There's power on everything. All of it.
Artur throws. In terms of hand speed, maybe to the eye, David Benavidez seems a little faster, a little sharper, but he compromises a great deal of defense to where, even with that speed, he's open to be countered. They've both got the same sweet spot. David Benavidez and Artur Beterbiev.
Mid-range to inside. Like most every pressure fighter, they want to get close to you. And once they're there, they want to let go of combinations.
At that proximity, the shorter fighter with the shorter arms has the edge because the punch doesn't have to travel as far and the shorter fighter doesn't need as much room to work. Within close quarters, the shorter fighter with the shorter arms has the edge, and in this situation, that would be Artur Beterbiev.
And because he throws shorter punches overall, tighter hooks, tighter uppercuts that are not telegraphed,
Punch doesn't have to travel as far and reaches the target. I don't think there's a question, I don't think there's a debate who the bigger puncher is. That's easily Artur Beterbiev, even now that he's approaching 40.
power is the last thing to go, and I think he's still got plenty of that.
Edge and power's got to go to Artur. I don't see David Benavidez doing to guys what Artur Beterbiev does to guys. No way in hell an exhausted Caleb Plant would have been able to go the distance with an Artur Beterbiev like he went the distance with David Benavidez. No. You put that same Caleb Plant in there with Artur, and Artur finishes him.
Holding and all.
It's the excuse the David Benavidez fans made after the fight for David not knocking him out. That Caleb Plant kept holding him.
So fucking what if Caleb Plant kept holding him? Is he stronger than David?
David Benavidez is supposed to be a monster that doesn't know how to break a clinch? As stated, there's no way in hell that Caleb Plant would have went the distance with Artur where he did go the distance with David. This next fight might turn out to be another example. Anthony Yarde is a common opponent between Artur and David. And if David doesn't stop him, if he doesn't knock him out, it makes it more obvious who you gotta give the edge and power to.
Artur.
When you talk about footwork and coordination, there is another clear distinction. Artur, despite of being a pressure fighter, just like David, he's not limited to just coming forward, barreling forward, and applying pressure. When the situation calls for it, he can get on his toes, get on the good foot, and set up counters, like he did with Joe Smith Jr.
Do you remember what he did to Joe? Joe thought that he could put the pressure on Artur, jab his way in, and got that jab countered with a chopping right hand over the top as Artur backpedaled to create a bit of space. He could do the exact same thing to David Benavidez.
My humble opinion, Artur Beterbiev and David Benavidez are both pressure fighters, but there is a clear distinction. Artur is a better class of pressure fighter.
A better grade.
And the only caveat, the only drawback, is that Artur is more than 10 years older than David Benavidez, that he is the older fighter in the fight.
That is the only potential impediment. So there's a lot of emphasis on how does Artur look in his next fight.
And if he's able to stay in character and do to Dion Nicholson what everybody's expecting him to do to Dion Nicholson, he might also do it to David Benavidez. I mean, in terms of amateur accolades or professional accolades, Artur is just better. Where Artur reigned as a unified champion for some years, David Benavidez never unified anything.
He's only a champion now because he got that email from the WBC.
And careful that Artur doesn't look too good in his very next fight, as that might cause Team Benavidez to become mysteriously injured.
We'll see. Also in the works for the coming calendar year, David Morrell versus Callum Smith in the works for early 2026.
A highly palpable fight featuring two of the top light heavyweights in the thick of the division appears to be likely, as a fight between David Morrell and Callum Smith is in the works for the first quarter of next year. Matchroom Boxing head Eddie Hearn told The Ring, "I talked to Turki El Sheikh about staging that fight as part of a Saudi card in early 2026, said Hearn. We've pretty much agreed to that, and I think you'll see it, hopefully, land there. It's a tremendous fight.
A brilliant fight.
You gotta figure that if what Turkey wants to do is bring David Benavidez right back early next year, presumably against Artur Beterbiev, this fight between Callum and David Morrell might be on that undercard. The ETA on this show that Turkey plans on doing in the first quarter of next year, I don't get the sense that the show is for January. Not if David Benavidez is going to be on it. I would say late February, maybe March. It's a tight schedule. Callum Smith was a finalist to land a date against David Benavidez for the Ring 4 card on November 22nd in Saudi Arabia, but Anthony Yarde ultimately got the assignment. Smith last fought in February and outlasted the previously undefeated Joshua Buatsi in a slugfest to capture the WBO interim title. Smith, a 35-year-old from Liverpool, petitioned in May for a mandatory title shot against Ring Magazine and Unified champion Dmitry Bivol, but the sanctioning body denied the request. Morrell, 12-1 with 9 knockouts, meanwhile, has had a rocky year. The 27-year-old Cuban southpaw was fortunate to sneak away with a split decision win against Imam Katayev in July during a fight in which he got dropped. Morrell also lost against David Benavidez back in February by way of a unanimous decision.
The buzz around David Morrell has dissipated all this calendar year, and he no longer seems like the Cuban bogeyman that he was made out to be.
Particularly after his last performance against Imam Katayev, a noticeably shorter, stumpier, stockier fighter who was not only able to floor him, but convince a lot of people that he should have got the nod. He should have got the decision in their fight. In spite of that, David Morrell was able to make off like a bandit and move right into a Callum Smith fight. Callum Smith, WBO interim champion, in line to fight for a belt in the not-so-distant future. The fight that Callum had with Joshua Buatsi will turn out to be the only fight he had this entire calendar year. Callum Smith, a fighter who's capable and resilient, but often inactive.
Money is the reason.
That's what the rumors are, that the reason Callum doesn't fight more often is because he drives a hard bargain. Could he have fought again this year after beating Joshua Buatsi? Of course he could have. There was plenty of time. He could have set up a little homecoming fight in Liverpool against some ham and egger.
Lost a bit of time on those David Benavidez talks.
But still, there was plenty of time to get Callum out there one more time before this year is out. And that's often the story with Callum, that he's exciting and he's capable and he's accomplished. He's a former champion. He just doesn't fight often enough.
Money is the reason.
Must have told himself, why am I going to get out there and risk my WBO interim status against some nobody when I can box in another big Saudi show for another big Saudi bag early next year? And thus, he sat out the rest of it. That's how it happened. Callum is a more accomplished fighter than David Morrell and a more experienced professional as well. I think he's looked better as a light heavyweight than David Morrell has as a light heavyweight. David looked human against Radovanje Kalajdzic, lost to David Benavidez, and arguably lost to Imam Katayev. That of the two, Callum's the one that's been looking better.
David's been looking like shit.
The only thing I see working for David ahead of this fight is that Callum will have been out a long while, presumably a year's time, the night that they do fight. And that is an impediment. Constantly having to shake off ring rust because you haven't fought in a minute, that's a hindrance. And that makes this fight between Callum and David a bit closer than I initially thought. I would have leaned more towards Callum if he took the time out to have another fight, build on the momentum of the Buatsi fight. But if you're going to be shaking off ring rust...
Here we go again.
I still like the fight, though. I like the fight because it seems like a close fight and a tight fight, and you could probably still favor Callum to win it, just on experience, and that he's the one who's been looking better at light heavyweight.
You could give him the edge.
And I'm going to assume that Smith versus Morrell is for the undercard of Benavidez versus Beterbiev.
We'll see.